Welcome, Professor Luca Guardabassi, new member of the JPIAMR Scientific Advisory Board and in the role of newly elected Vice-Chair. Congratulations.
Thank you, Hannes.
We're happy to have you with us, and you are a Professor of One Health Antimicrobial Resistance at the University of Copenhagen, Professor of Veterinary Bacteriology in the Pathobiology and Population Sciences Department of the Royal Veterinary College, and last but not least, internationally recognized One Health microbiologist specialized in AMR. So what can be better than to talk about JPIAMR, the Scientific Advisory Board, and the great challenge, of course, of antimicrobial resistance. And welcome to this interview, Luca.
Thank you, Hannes. Thank you for the introduction.
We will zoom in on One Health, of course, and especially on animal perspectives, the JPIAMR, and especially the update of the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. That's the acronym SRIA that we will be mentioning quite a few times during this interview. And of course, the future of AMR research, it's a great challenge. You are the new Vice Chair of JPIAMR Scientific Advisory Board. What are you looking forward to focus on in your new role?
Well, first of all, technically speaking, my role is to assist the chair, Till, in coordinating the group and providing useful advice to the management board. Of course, I have my own agenda in this role, which is of course in line also with the agenda of the group. But there are a few points that, in my opinion, are particularly important. So to make sure that the next calls and the SRIA, awful acronym, but wonderful document, well written. The new version will address the research and clinical needs of the community that is fighting against AMR. And then also somehow that the most important research priorities are addressed and emphasized in the calls, because there are a lot of things we can do against AMR, but some are probably more important than others. And finally, last but not least, I would like, I mean, I've been an applicant many times. I've submitted applications, sometimes successful, other times not successful. But one point that is quite important to me is also to simplify the two steps application procedure to avoid waste of time for the applicants, but also for the reviewers. So I have a few ideas about that, and I would like to discuss. I have already started discussing them with the rest of the group.
Sounds interesting. We're going to be touching a bit soon about the success of being an applicant. But first, a little bit curious about your background even more. You are at the University of Copenhagen, where you lead the research group, One Health Antimicrobial Resistance, focusing on development and testing of new diagnostics and therapeutic strategies to improve antimicrobial use and reduce AMR in animals. Can you share a little bit about its focus and perhaps some results from your group there?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in Copenhagen for quite a long time. I had breaks working at other university, Ross University and the Royal Veterinary College, where I still keep a part-time position, basically to follow some PhD students. But my base is in Copenhagen. And I've been studying, I started my PhD in 1996. And it was on AMR in aquatic environments. So since then, I've been studying different aspects of AMR, but I would say that the first part of my career was primarily focused on understanding the transmission of AMR from environmental habitats and animals to humans. not only resistant bacteria, but the genetic elements that they carry. And at some point, I got a little bit tired of this research because it was leading to the identification and characterization of problems. And I thought maybe it's better I invest my time in trying to find solutions rather than problems. And therefore, I established this research group that focuses on development of innovative diagnostic tools that can guide veterinarians and physicians to choose the right drug with focus on diseases that are particularly clinically important in terms of frequency and also severity. And then the other part is focusing on new antimicrobial strategies, which is broadly speaking involves from very fundamental research targeting focusing on the identification of antimicrobial drug targets, so new targets in the bacterial cells, to very applied studies where we test actually the efficacy of different alternatives to antimicrobials on reduction of antimicrobial use, and of course their efficacy in controlling specific infectious diseases. And right now we have a couple of projects, one funded by the JPIAMR that is called Farm Care, and another one that is an innovation action funded by the EU, the Commission, about developing and testing interventions in pig farms. And we test a variety of interventions. For example, if I have to mention the two that are being tested, will be tested because the Farm Care project has just started. They are basically based on management practices at the farm, avoiding mixing of piglets during the production cycle, especially at weaning. So when the piglets are separated from the mother and put in contact together with other piglets. So we try to keep the litter together and to avoid mixing of animals that are sick and healthy. Therefore, preventing stress and preventing the occurrence of post-weaning diarrhea, that is a very common disease in pig production. And also avoiding that treatment of the sick piglets may affect the healthy piglets by, for example, by being exposed to antimicrobial residues, or more simply by being exposed to resistant bacteria that have been shed by the treated piglets within the same pen. And then we have also another intervention where we test basically very basic biosecurity measures that may help to prevent the transmission of AMR from the piglets, from the pigs to the farmers, and from the farmers to their family households and to the community. So they are completely different measures, and I cannot say anything about the results because the project has just started. I can mention maybe some of the results that we are seeing in the EU project Avant and in other research studies that we have already completed. So in Avant, we test a variety of interventions varying from phage therapy, immunostimulants, gut microbiota modulators like probiotics, and feeding strategies. So we have a portfolio of different products and interventions that we test again in pigs, and again primarily to prevent and control post-weaning diarrhea. We focus on this disease because it's the main reason for antimicrobial use in pig production.
Oh.
And we have seen actually some very interesting results that I cannot completely anticipate, but where some of the products are actually having a beneficial effect on the microbiota, making the piglets more resilient to post-weaning diarrhea. The studies are presently at the preclinical level, and in 2023 we will perform a big clinical trial in farms in different countries, using the most promising interventions that have been tested in the preclinical trials. So next year I will be able to say more about this.
Sounds interesting, and nice also to hear that you focus on solutions. That's what we need. And also you mentioned farm care. You were actually a successful applicant in the 13th JPIAMR call, One Health Interventions to Prevent or Reduce the Development and Transmission of AMR that were that started early 2021. So some of the just recent results when it comes to funding of research coordinated by JPIAMR there. I'm curious, Luca, what draw you to focus on AMR in the first place when you started to study in this field?
That's a good question. Actually, I'm not sure what was the exact reason. I moved. I don't think it is a scientific reason. I moved to Denmark because at that time I had a relationship with a Danish girlfriend, and I came here, just graduated as a veterinarian, and I couldn't practice. My original plan was to be a small animal veterinarian, but I couldn't practice because of language and because of some rules at that time that required an exam to be accredited as a veterinarian in Denmark. So I started to look. I started to work in a slaughterhouse as a meat inspector, and it was not a great environment. All your senses, your view, I mean, a lot of noise, a lot of smell. It's not a great environment to work. So I decided to search for a PhD grant. And I was lucky to get one that was focusing, as I mentioned before, on AMR in aquatic environments. And so I started by pure chance, and then of course I got very interested in the topic. As demonstrated by the fact that after 20, I don't even remember how many years, more than 25 years, I'm still doing research on AMR. So obviously, I like the topic.
You started out early, and your chance was our luck to have you on.
I didn't start early because I had my PhD. I was 30 years old, so I didn't start early. I'm a little bit old. We must say that.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking about AMR. 30 years ago, AMR wasn't that big of a maybe a challenge or a topic for research.
Yeah, it started to grow at that time because there was a lot of discussion about the use of growth promoters. And actually, I think if I compare the use of antibiotics in the veterinary sector at that time, I think we have done a lot of progress in Europe and globally, I would say. So yes, it was not maybe such a big problem, but it started to, I mean, there was already awareness that the use of antimicrobials in animals could have a potential impact on public health. Maybe the type of bacteria we were studying at that time, like vancomycin-resistant enterococci, have been now replaced by other names like methicillin-resistant Staph aureus or ESBL-producing E. coli, but the problem was already there at the time.
Yeah. On the other hand, nowadays, we are even more aware of the magnitudes of this challenge. I'm just thinking of some data in 2013, some 131,000 tons were used antimicrobials in food animals and projected to reach some 200 tons by 2030. This is from Science in 2017. So the use of antimicrobials for food animals are still great. And how do you see a strategic research and innovation agenda that you're going to contribute to? How will that make a difference, do you think, in the context of research in this area?
So are you asking me this question with the particular regard to the use of antimicrobials in the in livestock production, or in
exactly general? Yes.
Okay.
How can the research agenda contribute to a context like this where?
So you mentioned some figures that are estimates and reflect also the huge amount of animals that we use for food production. And these animals are also produced under very stressful conditions because the society demands food that is cheap. So I think at least in some countries we have reached the limit. I don't think we can further reduce, for example, significantly the use of the overall consumption of antimicrobials in pig production in some countries like Denmark or the Netherlands. We can maybe try to rationalize the use, meaning that we use one antibiotic instead of another to limit the risks for public health. Of course, some efforts have to be done in other countries, especially in other parts of the world where the consumption of antimicrobials is still very high. And now they have some models, some countries that have shown that you can actually reduce the amount of antimicrobials without affecting animal health and productivity, which is of course very, very important if we want the farmers to continue their job. So I would expect that the JPIAMR, of course, continues to have this focus on public health and support research that can help in further reducing the global consumptions of antimicrobials in the animal sector. For example, by development of effective alternatives to antimicrobials, as we are trying to do. But on the other hand, I can see a growing animal health problem after the restrictions that have been done in the use of some antibiotics that were critically important in livestock production, like colistin and zinc oxide. That there is really a paucity of drugs in the veterinary arsenal. So we don't have the hospital drugs that our colleagues in human medicine can use. And now we have been also, I say we because I speak on behalf of the veterinary community. We have to treat severe E. coli disease that are often caused by multi-drug resistant strains using all the drugs to which E. coli is normally resistant. So if I look going back to post-weaning diarrhea caused by enterotoxigenic E. coli, we are using now as first choice antibiotics drugs that have a percentage of resistance in clinical isolates of these pathogenic E. coli around 20%. So that would be not ethically acceptable in a medical context. So giving a drug to a patient knowing that 1 out of 5 cases will likely result in treatment failure. So I think we need also to look at that aspect, and I would expect the JPIAMR to support also research to address this important animal health threat that we are facing by reducing the use of antibiotics, but especially by banning or restricting the use of some very effective molecules in animals. And then there is also the chapter of the companion animals, which is a completely different chapters, because these are, I mean, of course, we care a lot about the welfare and the health of our pets, and we have seen differently from livestock, we have seen patterns of antimicrobial resistance that are similar to those observed human hospitals. So with the emergence of multi-drug resistant bacteria that are often isolated also from humans, maybe due to the close contact that we have with our pets. So there is an issue of sharing bacteria between human pets, and the challenge for veterinarians to treat these infections without having the tools and the drugs that are available in human medicine. So I hope that there will be also an increasing attention for tackling the AMR problems in the companion animal medicine sector.
You're an expert on the One Health AMR. It's not a priority topic itself in the JPIAMR SRIA, but rather the basis of the whole approach to support research. From your expertise and point of view, tell us a bit about the developments when it comes to this area, One Health. What do you think is important to highlight from your perspective?
Well, first of all, thank you for considering me an expert in One Health. Sometimes I feel that the general understanding of One Health in the scientific community is actually quite different from my understanding. So I see a lot of colleagues and scientists believing that One Health is the transmission of diseases and AMR between animals and humans, and I think this is just a small aspect of One Health, at least from my perspective. I believe that One Health is more a strategic approach towards joint training and scientific collaboration between professionals in different sectors, especially human and veterinary medicine, but also environmental sciences to some extent. So it's okay to focus on transmission of AMR, but let's try also to improve share knowledge between veterinarians and physicians, between clinical microbiologists that work in human and veterinary laboratories and infectious disease specialists that work in human and veterinary hospitals. I think this is the most important part of the One Health concept, and there is still a lot to do in the future to implement this concept in the real world.
So, last question. If you could wish for, you're looking for solutions, if you could wish for one big thing to happen in the field of One Health AMR research linked to your field, what would you wish for?
Well, I wish that we really find some solutions to avoid the use of antimicrobials in animals, maybe not completely, but reduce it down to a minimum. So some alternatives that are really effective in preventing and controlling infectious diseases. And then if I go back for a second to my view of One Health, I would like to see in the future more joint training and scientific collaboration between professionals in human medicine and veterinary medicine. We have here at the University of Copenhagen a joint course between the two curricula, the medical and the veterinary curriculum. But this is just the beginning. There could be much more, not only in the university training, but also as part of ongoing educational activities after graduation. I think both doctors and veterinarians could benefit from these joint trainings. So my hope and my wish is that we will see more of this joint training, and which of course results also in more opportunities for scientific collaboration across sectors. And I will definitely use the last years because I don't want to work until I'm 80 years old, and so I will use the last years of my job to push in that direction and make sure that in the future there will be more. interaction between the two sectors.
This sounds promising, Luca Guardabassi, our newly elected Vice Chair of the JPIAMR Scientific Advisory Board. I hope we can have more conversations with you on these topics. And we wish you a very warm welcome to JPIAMR and to the shared work that we're doing.
Thank you very much, Hannes, and likewise, I have really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope we'll have more in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.